Finally, I may
Yeah.
introduce Ilana Manneh, researcher who is now struggling with some technical problems, but she's at the Swedish Institute for Educational Research, and she will now present a collection of research on how connection between leisure time and learning are best met. Here you go, Ilona. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Eventually, we managed to solve the technical problem. Thank you. I'll start by presenting myself. My name is Ilana Manneh, as Malin said, and I'm from the Swedish Institute for Educational Research. And the new systematic review that we are publishing today is about meaningful leisure time, development and learning in school-age educare, which in Swedish, fritidshem. As I said, the Swedish Institute for Educational Research has the aim to bridge between research and teachers' practice, and that the development of teaching and learning can be evidence or research-based. So the Institute actually funds research and conducts systematic reviews in cooperation with external researchers. From the Swedish Institute for Educational Research, we have been 4 people who worked on this review, which is me, the project manager, and then we have Johan Wallin, which is assistant project manager, and we have information specialist and project assistant, Eva Bergman and Katarina Molin. We usually cooperate with external researchers, and in this review, who participated in this review with Björn Haglund from University of Gävle and Karin Lager from University of Gothenburg. And both of them are senior researchers in the field. I will start the presentation by giving a brief background about the aim of this review and why it is important to conduct this systematic review. Then I present the summary of research, which is the summary of 37 studies that are included in this review. And lastly, I will try to give a brief description of the review process, which means that how the process of the study selection was been conducted and how we ended up with 37 studies in this review. As you can see, the review question in our work has been guided by how do teachers create conditions for pupils' meaningful leisure time and promote their development and learning in school-age educare. So our point of departure has been that, according to Swedish curriculum, that school-age educare has the objective to offer children meaningful leisure time and promote their development and learning. So our aim has been to provide some guidance and support to teachers in their daily practice by presenting a rich and detailed account of existing empirical research on different approaches and methods in order to create good conditions for children's meaningful leisure time and development and learning. Our ambition has been to bridge between research and teachers, and research can be part of teachers' practice. In other words, that teachers can plan, carry out, and evaluate teaching based on research-based methods. So, and eventually we aim to highlight also the teaching and learning that actually occur in school-age educare and the role of teachers, students, in children's learning and development. I will start by presenting the summary of the research, which is on ways of creating conditions for pupils' leisure time and promote their development and learning. And as I mentioned earlier, that the review includes 37 studies, and most of these studies are of qualitative nature based on observations and interviews. These studies focus on social interaction between children and teachers and between children's at school-age educare. These studies also focus on group activities, which means that these activities are planned and initiated so the whole group can participate, or group of the children. So these activities are planned and initiated by teachers or children, or actually both. It also has to be focused on children's needs, interests, and as well as teaching and learning goals. And as we can see in the figure, that the themes are interconnected in practice, but I will be presenting them separately. So the figure shows that teachers offer organized teaching and learning activities and create learning environments, as well as they have kind of approaches that they use in order to stimulate and support children development. So our first theme that we identified in the studies is about teachers' approaches towards children. The two main approaches that we find is about observing children or acting. What we mean by observing, that children often get the freedom to organize their play and activities in ways that they find it meaningful to them. And the teacher is often in the background in order not to interfere with their play and give them the opportunity to develop different social skills on their own, which to develop skills like patience, conflict solving, and cooperation. All of this has to be in a safe environment. Teachers also participate in children's play and activity. That's what we mean by act. And they also talk and listen to them, acknowledge what children do, say and do, which is important in order to build trust and make them feel safe. Teachers also guide children on a daily basis, for example, how to manage peer relations. What we actually mean by teachers' approaches here, that teachers often have conscious choices and decisions while interacting with children. And we have many studies in the review that actually examine and discuss the teachers' approaches, which I gave some examples here. For instance, Dahl, Haglund, and Landahl. And there is other studies in the review. The second theme that we identified in the studies is about creating, stimulating, and inspiring learning environments. This can be done in two different main ways, which is about designing physical learning environment. We mean that teachers often organize indoor and outdoor environment by providing different materials that benefit children's interactions, where children can use them in their own, that they can find it meaningful to them, at the same time develop their play. Teachers can, for example, create different areas, such as reading area and dramatic play areas. For instance, we can see that some studies talk about kitchen and house play and how children can use it on their own. There is studies also that showed how literacy materials can be very helpful and very stimulating for children, especially in authentic learning environments. They can provide notebooks, paper, pencils for children, and they can use it how they want, so they can create the play that they find it meaningful to them. Another example we found in the studies is about play boxes. What we mean by play boxes, it's boxes with specific content or theme that teachers often prepare in advance, and children can choose how to play with them in groups. For example, we have travel box, detective box, and circus box. The aim is to challenge and inspire children to play with new friends and develop social skills, as well as develop their play in a meaningful way. Another way of creating stimulating environments is about introducing educational digital resources. It's about different learning programs to develop different skills, which is known that it can promote the development of both knowledge and skills, such as language, writing and reading, and mathematics, and of course, always social skills in the center. The aim is that children can develop as a group and also as individuals. I chose two examples here to present. We have in one study examined the computer-produced multimedia stories, where children can create stories in a fun way, and at the same time they can develop both writing and reading in authentic learning environments. Another example here, we find a study that discussed peer-to-peer learning by using online games. The last theme that we identified in these studies is about organizing teaching and learning. And these can be in two main ways that teacher did that, in short-term activities and project-based learning. These two categories or the way that teachers plan these kind of activities is that these activities have well-defined goals as a point of departure, that the teacher knows what the children need to learn. So they plan the activities in that way. About short-term activities, we have, for example, drama and dance to promote children's social and emotional skills. For example, children together can prepare a dance improvisation to the sound of music. And there is other examples in the studies that included in the review. We have also literacy-based activities, which means that children can use writing and reading for authentic purposes. In these situations, children will be motivated to write and read without feeling that they have to write and read, which can stimulate and motivate them in writing and reading also. There is other examples for fun activities with math. For example, we have board games, which is very popular, as we know, in school-age educare. And we have example of recipe activity, which means that children learn how to calculate fractions when, for example, when baking or fixing drinks and these things, and which is done in a meaningful and in a fun way. Another way for teachers in organizing teaching and learning is about initiating projects. And these projects often is based on children's interests, give space and time for them to explore, experiment, and design. They can have different focus. We found many studies who focus on STEM learning, like science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and about sustainability issues, which means that the focus is climate change, recycling, and other issues that has a connection to local community issues, which is issues that are related to children's everyday life. I chose to present here two examples which I found myself very interesting. First of all, the photo voice, maybe part of you knows what it is about. It's actually a method used to document and reflect upon daily practices. So children use a camera and take pictures to communicate issues of concern. For example, how they experience their environment, if it's fun, safe, or take pictures to explore their surrounding and at the same time presenting it to others. They get the chance to tell their stories and stimulate to changes, which the studies show how this is very meaningful to the children. Another example is about the Rube Goldberg machine. One study showed how this kind of structure that children can build together can be very meaningful to them. And this machine is like a chain reaction structure designed to complete a simple task. It consists of a series of simple unrelated units where an action of each part triggers the next. Like you can resemble it to domino game where one part can trigger the next to fall down. It's the same concept, but here the children get the opportunity to use mathematics and science in a fun and purposeful way. So in overall, we can see that how teachers approach children and how they create stimulating learning environments and organize teaching and learning show how education and care are intertwined. And this is actually what it is unique to school-age educare and other similar international centers. These methods actually include both planned teaching situations and spontaneous, which we mean that encounters with children in meaningful contexts. It means that teachers plan and initiate activities to stimulate and challenge children, but give them space to find their own way to participate. And at the same time, teachers always there and pay attention to what is actually happening at the moment in order to provide support to them. And at the same time, they can contribute to their development and learning. The review also shows that there is some aspects that need to be taken into account when planning, and especially when giving time and space for children to play on their own. The first aspect that we found or identified in these studies is that children may actually exclude each other from like the group or play, which can happen intentionally or unintentionally. For example, when playing outdoor, it is not always easy for teachers to have an overview of children's play, which can be problematic in some way. Another aspect is we know that teachers need to challenge and stimulate children by offering new learning situations, but at the same time, we know that it's not always interesting for children to participate. So the main challenge here is to find a balance between giving space and time for children to play on their own and offer them opportunity to advance their play and develop new and important skills without pushing or forcing them in participating in activities that they maybe don't find stimulating or meaningful. And this review shows also how the teacher is very central, both in providing support and security, as well as create conditions for children's meaningful leisure time and development. Now, I would like to give a brief description. I left it in the end because I feel like it's very important also to give some idea about how the review actually was conducted. And this process, as we can see in the figure, it starts from identification of and assessments of needs in the field, what we feel like teachers need because to develop their learning and teaching, and will end in bringing together the results. We always start from a clearly stated review question that guide actually how we collect, analyze, and synthesize research by using explicit and transparent methods. This in order, of course, to ensure both scientific quality and relevance. This process, as I mentioned before, has been conducted in collaboration with external researchers. Both of them were senior researchers in the field in order to guarantee a high quality of review process and, of course, a high quality of a systematic review. To give some idea about how the relevance and quality assessment has been done, I'll just give a brief description. And the process always starts with searching in international and Scandinavian databases in order to find relevant research studies. And we use a search strategy, which means that we use terms related to school age educare and after school care in other countries, and terms related to what is important actually in this review, which is meaningful leisure time and children's development and learning. As you can see that the searches ended with a very high number, which almost 10,000 studies, which we went through and to select the studies that are both relevant and have high quality to be included in this review. So this has been carried out mostly or mainly by the external researchers. The studies were evaluated concerning both of their relevance and quality. That's what we ended with 37 studies, which were presented earlier in the three main themes that I mentioned earlier. And in order to increase visibility and credibility, the process, including all steps, the four main steps that we see in the figure, is well documented and presented in the final report. Yeah, I would like to say some words because often we have a challenge how we choose or how we select or assess the studies that are from international research studies. And in this review, we have been looking for Swedish school educare studies and after-school care in other countries. And we know that there is differences and similarities between these two. And I just felt like we need to clarify these aspects so it becomes clear how the selection process has been made. So we ended up with these 37 studies. Just to give an idea what kind of after-school care there is in other countries, maybe part of you actually recognize some of them. We have all-day schools in Germany, for example. We have school-age care in England and Australia, and we have the after-school programs in the United States. We know that there is differences between these organizations and Swedish school-age educare. And as we know that these international after-school care, unlike Swedish school-age educare, they're often organized and funded by different organizations. And in certain countries, these organizations are actually private. But what we focused on in the selection process is, or what guided the process of relevance and quality assessments, has been that we focused on methods presented in these studies had to fulfill certain criteria so it can be used or be relevant for Swedish school-age educare. The first one is that these methods has to offer enrichment activities after school hours, and that these activities contribute to pupils' meaningful leisure time and their development and learning. And of course, the most important aspect that these methods has to take into consideration children's needs and interests in order to be meaningful to them. So what we actually focused on was the context of these studies and how the methods presented in these studies can be relevant and significant to Swedish school-age educare. The last step in this process, or the review process, is how to bring together the results from the 37 studies that we presented earlier. And as we can see in the figure, we have studies from 9 countries, and most of them coming from after-school programs in the United States. And there is other studies from Turkey, Singapore, Canada, and Scandinavia, like Norway and Finland. And in order to bring these studies together, we used thematic analysis, which means that we tried to look for patterns concerning the methods examined in these studies, and in what ways these methods offer children meaningful leisure time and contribute to their development and learning. And in that way, we produced a rich and detailed account of this empirical studies, which we presented in the review. And as I mentioned earlier, it's very important to see these themes as interconnected, which means they act together. But we chose to present them separately, just to show how each one actually looks like. For the full report in Swedish, you can find it in our homepage, which is www.skolfi.se, and then you can find also extra material, which is in form of questions and answers and some discussion questions if you find interesting to look at. It's also in our homepage, but it is in Skolforskningsinstitutet, which is another page. You can find it in our main homepage. Thank you so much for listening.